On my first day is welcome to the team. You're going to be coordinating our Doing Business in Africa campaign. It was still very new at the time. There are 20 different U.S. government agencies that are engaged in this process, as well as outreach to the private sector and other stakeholder groups. So I do a lot of work like this, but also a lot of coordination and networking and trying to really develop an infrastructure for communication and an infrastructure for development to support U.S. companies who are interested in doing business in sub-Saharan Africa. There's the overview. Just very quickly, I do want to touch on the National Export Initiative. The Doing Business in Africa campaign is part of the broader U.S. strategy towards sub-Saharan Africa that the President announced in June of 2012. One of the pillars is focused on trade and investment, and as part of the trade and investment pillar, we launched the Doing Business in Africa campaign. Again, I'll talk a little bit about the U.S. government resources that are available. Why I'm really here today is we want to continue to fortify the relationships that we have established with organizations like TEAS, and then what the next steps are. There we go. Many of you have probably heard of the National Export Initiative, and I love to tell this story. I've actually been with the Department of Commerce with the International Trade Administration for over 20 years, actually almost 25 years, 24 in July. And I remember the President Obama's first State of the Union address. I was at home and I was watching it, and I literally started jumping up and down in my living room because he was the first president to articulate the linkage between U.S. exports and the creation of U.S. jobs, and how important that really was. And in the previous administrations, I've worked in the Western Hemisphere. All of the free trade agreements that we have in Latin America, the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, the Panama Free Trade Agreement, I had an opportunity to work on all of those agreements, but the U.S. perception of free trade agreements and exporting was very different 10, 15 years ago than where it is now. And so there definitely is more of a linkage between how important the export of U.S. goods and services abroad is helping to support U.S. jobs at home. And so we definitely consider the Doing Business in Africa campaign. As T showed you, there's a great deal of potential and interest and a thirst for U.S. goods and services in sub-Saharan Africa. But as I'll talk about in my remarks, it's still a very small percentage of U.S. goods and services that are finding their way into the market. So there's a great deal of potential there. Again, American jobs are supported by exports increased to $9.8 million in 2012. That was up by $1.3 million since 2009, and it's putting us ahead of schedule of one of the goals of the National Export Initiative, which is to add 2 million export-supported jobs by the end of 2014. There still is a lot of work to do. U.S. businesses were faced with economic headwinds in 2012, and that's why the Obama administration is continuing to do everything possible to support farmers, workers, and businesses, and the interaction between those stakeholder groups to be able to successfully compete in the global marketplace. I think I need to cut my nails. The Doing Business in Africa campaign, the Trade Promotion Coordinating Committee, which I'll talk a little bit about as I continue to go through my presentation, is actually an interagency group that was established by Congress. However, the chair of the committee is the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and it's co-chaired by the Undersecretary for International Trade, my boss. And the commercial service, the U.S. Commercial Service, have any of you worked either domestically or internationally with the U.S. Commercial Service at the International Trade Administration? Could I see a show of hands? Oh, wonderful. Well, this is a great group, definitely to work with. If you're here in the local area, we have 2 centers, one in a U.S. Export Assistance Center in Northern Virginia, and we also have one in Baltimore. And we have international trade specialists in those centers who are basically acting as your first stop for helping you to develop what your export strategy is, which markets you want to get into, being able to determine what the best prospects are, build out what your return on investment is going to be, help you to identify and receive counseling services to find potential buyers in your markets, find advertisers, lawyers, just a whole litany of different activities and services that are provided through the commercial service. We have commercial officers and representatives in embassies all around the world. Specifically in sub-Saharan Africa, we do have representatives in 4 posts, but we also have an arrangement through the Trade Promotion Coordinating Committee where we have partner posts in 22 other countries throughout the continent. So there's a strong partnership and a lot of opportunities for you. And I'll talk a little bit about electronically, online, there's a sort of a first stop that you can go to be able to identify the commercial service representatives that can help you. Also, they engage in trade missions overseas, reverse trade missions. We host delegations that come from abroad. We have an international buyers program, trade shows. There are a number of different ways that you can gather information and establish and make long-standing contacts to successfully do business and to gain access into the market that is going to be beneficial to you commercially over several years. There we go. I'm going to skip through this, but the best thing to see here, there's a little bit of a discrepancy. Some people say 6, some people say 7 of the 10 fastest growing economies. According to a number of reports, 6 or 7 of those are in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's just to support the information that T was giving you, that if you're looking at the region as a long-term investment and the potential and opportunity for growth, definitely sub-Saharan Africa is a place that you want to look at. This is just a sample of some of the major U.S. companies who are already doing business or investing in the region. We just did an event with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that was focused on investment and trade opportunities through so making the case for that if we really want to be successful, there is a need to have a infrastructure within the U.S. government to support U.S. businesses abroad. These are large companies who have, access to a lot of money and a lot of resources and have a lot of time to strategically be successful. But for small to medium-sized companies or for companies who have yet to target sub-Saharan Africa as a potential area for growth, they can definitely benefit from the services that are provided by the U.S. government. Here are just a few of the sectors. Obviously in sub-Saharan Africa, there are many opportunities, and depending upon the market, U.S. investors to continue to be afraid to enter the market because they're concerned about corruption and other activities. So it's important to show this slide just to show you the rankings in the 2013 World Bank Doing Business report that showed how some of the top 20 reformers are in Africa, just to give you a sense of how some of that is changing. So it's important to recognize that there is a framework for improvement and fighting corruption and other activities on the continent. Building a supportive network. This is what's really important to me. As I said, I would list a few different resources for you. In the middle, you'll see the Trade Promotion Coordinating Committee, which, as I said, is made up of all of the federal trade agencies, which includes the financing agencies like OPIC and Exim Bank, and the Trade Development Agency, as well as USAID. The State Department is a member, the Treasury Department, the Foreign Agricultural Service under USDA. All of those agencies are a part of our network. And so what we have tried to do through the Doing Business in Africa campaign, part of my specific job is to do a better job of having all of us coordinate together so that when we're in the region, when people come to speak to us, if you come up to me today and you have a question about some of the financing opportunities or banks that are looking for opportunity projects or investment, you shouldn't have to call 10 different people just to find the right person. In addition, in terms of partnerships with organizations like T, we are developing a speakers bureau so that we can get you the right experts at your event that are focused or harnessed in on the areas where you have specific questions. So while I'm here to do a general presentation today, you may want to have a session that is specific on energy and the Power Africa initiative that the president launched just a few weeks ago when he traveled to Africa. So we can help to do that for you. And so what you see around here is the network of who we work with. We work with the private sector. We work with other U.S. government agencies. There are other stakeholder groups who also have an interest. We work with state economic offices and programs. We work with organizations like the State International Development Organization. So there's a very broad network of stakeholders who are very interested in exporting because of the linkage between exports and economic development and economic growth. So we work with a lot of different folks, and so we want to work with you. And as I said, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I think the best thing to be able to do is maybe we can have T, if you're interested, to forward the PowerPoint to you, or she can post the PowerPoint on their webpage. Because, but you can also get the information from our Africa, the www.export.gov is the first webpage that was on the previous slide. The second is if you go to www.export.gov/Africa, all of the various resources are linked there, and this information literally was pulled from that page for you to be able to see today, just so that you could see the full range of programs and services that are available, and exactly what is TDA doing in Africa, what is OPIC doing in Africa, what is the U.S. Department of Commerce International Trade Administration, what are they doing? I should mention that since I am actually wearing a bigger hat today and I'm representing the Department of Commerce, that we have 12 agencies that make up the Department of Commerce, and out of those 12 agencies, each one of them has an international component to them. And so we have been working very closely with the Minority Business Development Agency, the Economic Development Administration, and a number of our other sister agencies on the Doing Business in Africa campaign, including the Census Bureau and the Foreign Trade Division at Census, who are helping us to compile data to support the work that we're doing in the region and to identify where we can be of best service to U.S. companies. So let's see how this works. I'm going to kind of go through, as I said, but I just wanted you to see, there's in the slide, it kind of goes through and tells you a little bit about what each agency is doing and how we're collaborating, how we're working together. I didn't mention the Millennium Challenge Corporation, but we get quite a few questions about how to do business with MCC because it can be a little bit confusing. And so we have partnered with one organization who is in the process now of developing a series of one-pagers on how to do business with each agency specifically in Africa. And we hope to have those completed within the next month, and they'll be available on the Africa web portal, which I'm very proud to say that when I started in January, at the end of January, the Africa web portal had just been uploaded maybe a month before that, and they had 2,000.
Really that we're going to be dwelling in. And of course I have today a team for diversifying the state economy and transforming Delta State into an ideal business and residential destination in Nigeria. Our special guest today is the Warri Industrial Business Park team. Helen Emore will be talking us through on the project shortly. Now I'd like to talk to you about real estate in Nigeria. I had a group in Nigeria that was talking to me. It's a teachers association. They have a cooperative. The police department has a cooperative. The military has a cooperative. The military, for instance, has a post-housing savings and loan bank. The bank is set up to support soldiers that want to build houses, that want to own houses, to access financing to be able to own a home. Now, part of the problem is liquidity for such a bank. I know that it's a bit difficult for us to access long-term financing in Nigeria. That is part of the problems that we have in accessing financing for projects. And projects are actually not really short-term projects, because real estate projects are not short-term projects, so you actually need long-term funding to be able to create mortgage that can sustain the payback period. Now, the group came to me and I spoke with them and they said, look, if you can get a foreign investor that can bring a solution on affordable housing and then be able to create a mortgage backed by the bank, we'll be able to access financing and then such a technology to own homes in our places. I had meetings with this particular bank and the bank said, look, it's very easy, because what they can do is, let's say for instance there's someone in this room who has a technology for housing, and then such a person partners with this mortgage bank, and then the mortgage bank is also a military bank. Then there's a prototype, for instance, for a particular housing unit, and then the soldier says, I need this 3-bedroom home, and it costs, let's say, $1,000. He goes to the bank. There's a relationship between this company and the bank, and the technology is there. Once he accesses such a mortgage, it's an automatic debit to his salary account. And for such a person to qualify, the person also has retirement benefits, because our pension scheme is also very good in Nigeria. Now it's all secured. So if you bring your technology, for instance, and you say, look, the Teachers Association, they've gone to a state and they've acquired a piece of land, but they can't build. And the Teachers Association is saying, look, I have regular income. I'm ready to sign off that this direct debit goes straight to the ministry and then is deducted at source to pay back whoever that is giving me a home. And then if I retire, I have retirement benefits, so I can't even qualify for a home that is more than my retirement benefit. So it is tied all in. So, but we've not been able to get any partner who could come take such an opportunity. And it's huge. Before coming to the US, I went to Cross River State. I had a meeting in Cross River State, and it was also house shortages. In Nigeria, there's so much shortage of housing, and it's difficult to access mortgage. So we can actually create mortgage through the bank, through these groups that are secured, call it cooperatives, call it associations. The University Teaching Hospital, for instance, they acquired a very huge mass of land, but the individuals cannot build, and they have regular incomes, they have pension, and all of this can secure mortgage facility. But because we don't have this kind of long-term funding, it's a bit of difficulty for us in Nigeria. This happens in all the states. You go to all the states in Nigeria, they have all these opportunities in real estate, but we're looking for people who can come in and take advantage of such potential.
Excuse me. Do you have insurance? Do you have an insurance firm that's going to insure those homes?
Yes, we have a good insurance system, and the insurance company is ready to work with us. I've had meetings with different insurance companies, and they are really, really ready to support any initiative we bring to the table. In Lagos State, for instance, talking of a line from Alagbado somewhere in Lagos to Marina in Lagos as well.